What's up, everyone? Welcome to Evil Dojo. We have a long road ahead of us. I don't know how long exactly, but we've started. There's a lot of groundwork that I have to lay in order to enable the player to be able to save the game. What I have works. There's some quirks and nuances. I feel like it could be a little bit more responsive. However, I can already see the road to implementing Gamestate in my head. And off stream last night, I began stubbing out unit tests for the objects that are required to build up to the game state, right? So as an example of this, I began writing unit tests for dungeon tiles. And then from there, I began writing tests for dungeon floors. Next, we're going to do unit tests for the dungeon itself. And we need a way to serialize each of these things. And then we're going to need a way to serialize the entire game state. And the game state has a lot. Writing out all of that data into a cohesive format and then reading it back in, that's going to be quite a challenge. However, I did take a look ahead at essentially what I'm going to need to do in order to export this final game state save object to the browser, for instance. Because, yeah, I could write it to file, the binary, right? And then allow people to read it in or whatever. But we don't exactly have that ability in the browser. And I began thinking, how do people save game or save state in browser? And that led to finding some code that uses Inscription to handle that process for us. But before we can do that, before we can use that code, I'm going to have to manually implement all of the different serialization functions, test them to make sure that they work, and then stitch them together into one final big save game function. And then similarly, we're going to have to also write the load game function as well. Like I said, it's a long road. That's just one thing, right? That doesn't include the improvements to entity path finding that I want to do. That doesn't include, all the new monsters, the new tile types that I want to implement. That doesn't include all of the other features. But we're going to have to do save game at some point. And we already have so much in the game that implementing this is going to be a bit of a pain in the ass. So to make it less of a pain in the ass in general, we have to do it now, because if we don't and we continue building on features, we're going to have a bad time. Is anyone here yet? Can I start rambling more than I've already started rambling, or are y'all ready for code? What's the deal here? In about 45 minutes, I'm going to have to feed my girl, and I'm going to be on for a while today, I think. Probably take a break to eat in the middle, but I'll leave the stream running while I eat. But one of the things I've been thinking about is that I feel like the game could be more responsive. Nobody else has played the game yet. What's up, Rectum? Nice name. I'll allow it. Okay, so if we're gonna get started here, what are we doing first? We're talking about game state saving, right? I mentioned off stream the other night. I began working on unit tests, actually with the help of Aider. I'm starting to kind of like Aider a bit. It's like the most important part of Cursor, but stripped out into a command line tool, which I love. I fucking love that. I could show you a little bit of that. Actually, I think that's a great idea because like I said, I started writing unit tests for the objects that build up to the dungeon. So it's about time for us to actually write unit tests for the dungeon itself. First, we're going to create a new file. Testdungeon.h. I don't know if this is supposed to be true. It's making some assumptions that I am not sure about. Okay, it's probably fair. All right, this is the beginning of our unit test file for dungeons. Oh, there we go. There we go. All right, let's see. Okay, that's a good clean output. Just wanted to get rid of those print statements. Um, oh, right, yeah. This doesn't take into account the unit test. We actually just cracked 10,000 lines of code. We are sitting at 10,265 lines of code. And I previously said that when this happens, I was going to go back and start refactoring things. But I think I'm going to push ahead for a bit. Motherfucker. I didn't say to do shit. You need to stop that shit immediately. I am so sick of Gemini popping up when I don't ask it to. I'm gonna fucking have to go through and find a way to disable that shit. God damn. I like Google and everything, but Jesus. It's like a butt dial from hell. AI just starts. First of all, I know what the fuck refactoring code is, bitch. I don't need you to tell me that shit. Look at chat. Oh yeah, I am planning on. Well, first of all, thank you for showing up to that raid. Um, that's super awesome, man. I'm really happy to see a repeat fall. I'm still fucking like running off the fumes of that very small, innocuous thing, but it really, didn't. It made more than just my day. Let me just show you the game to show you where it's at, and show you how Sokoban mechanics are going to factor in. It's very straightforward. I'm assuming that you've played NetHack or some roguelike, possibly, right? Here we go. So as you can see, top-down grid-based dungeon crawler. I got fucking killed by a goddamn slime. And I've worked on these starting parameters that people be starting with, because I'm getting nuked and like I'm getting three-shotted. You make one wrong move and you're fucking dead. But that's kind of the goal. Like, I want this to be a really hard game on one level. Like, once you get to like into the workflow, it'll become easier over time, right? But like, I want it so that in the very beginning, it's kind of like Dark Souls in that you have to pay very close attention to your individual actions. Otherwise, you might make a mistake and it costs you dearly. And this could get down to making one single move incorrect. So usually first thing I have myself do here is pick up and equip the buckler, because I've hard-coded the buckler to be like a really good defensive item right now. So instead of regular chance of attack, everyone ends up having to roll a 20 in order to hit me. So now there's only a 1 in 20 chance I'll actually get hit. Significantly increases my survivability while I'm testing. Go and equip the sword because it does more damage than our regular punch. I leave corpses on the floor because, one, I think it's a really cool design aesthetic, and two, I'm still working out exactly how I want this next mechanic to work. But I think it would be really cool to enable something similar to what NetHack had in being able to pick up bodies. But I want to combine this with a Sokoban mechanic in a way. I want to be able to pull and drag and push bodies around. Normally with Sokoban mechanics, you're limited to pushing a stone or a boulder or a box or something. And you have like a maze where the boxes are placed in such a way that you have to move them in a very specific fashion in order to solve the puzzle, right? And I have absolute plans for this sort of thing. Not only with regular boxes and boulders and things like this, but also I want early on to have like a very simple puzzle where there's a tile on the floor that acts as a pressure plate. And you have to kill an enemy and then pull their body onto the pressure plate to activate some door that otherwise won't open or something like that. And I want to do this because it's kind of like a teaching mechanic in that like I introduce you to the fact that you can do this by introducing this puzzle, and I also force the player to have to do it at least once so that they learn the mechanic exists to begin with. And then later we can have like puzzles where you have to pull like multiple bodies or maybe even a specific body. In the original NetHack, bodies could go into your inventory. You could eat them, and you could also put them on altars and sacrifice them as like offerings and then get different things. I think a lot of that is stuff that I want to have in this game, but it's stuff we have to build up to. I don't think that I want corpses to go into the inventory, although technically we have the ability to do that. The problem is that it would be unrealistic to allow the player to like have multiple bodies in their inventory. So we would have to have some sort of a weight mechanism. And the more I think about it, like even though I have the ability to implement weight as a component now, it introduces too much more tuning that I would have to do to all the numbers to balance the game later on once all that stuff's implemented. So I want to omit weight. And in order to omit weight, I'm not going to allow the player to pick up bodies and have them in your inventory. I think this is fair. I think this is a good design decision. Plus, it also gives a reason for the body push-pull mechanic to exist in the first place. I just implemented the ability to go down floors. Actually, this is a good first thing that I could fix. So, at the moment, traveling between floors is a free action. This would be a really easy fix to do right now. Traveling through floors absolutely should require a turn. It should not be a free action. Not a very great looking code. It works for the moment. Big nasty function. That whole thing handles switching between floors. We have to update this function. The way that we update it is we're going to have a check to see if it was the player that did this. And if it was, then we have to update the game state flag to indicate that it's no longer the player's turn. Because then the system keeps on rolling all of the enemies and NPCs will get to take their turn, and then it rolls back to the player one turn later. So to do this, I'm going to create a mark on the function so that we don't lose our place. I'm going to go into a function that I know has the code for the flag setting already. We're going to hop back to the mark I just made. And at the bottom of the very, well, no, not the whole thing, but rather only on successful traversal. Okay, so that should actually be sufficient. So let's test it out. 1, or 2. All right. All right, we got that working. Hi, baby. I'm going to get on the couch with my girl. Will there be web demos while you work on it to check out how it plays? I absolutely want to. I've got my itch account set up. I don't know what format things are going to be in the end, but I do want to get some way for people to play a demo, like really soon. Here, I'm going to reposition over here.
Got a laptop and a dream, a ticket to another scene. No fixed address, but that's alright, I'm a lone wolf in the moon. City lights, they're my guide, from coffee shops to riverside. I tap away to make my pay, living life in my own way. On the edge of two worlds I stand tall, digital cowboy answering my own call. From code to shelter, I find my way. Freedom in the nights and the bright new day. Cardboard box or high-rise view, got a knack for making through. Outrunning fate on shifting sands, survival in my own hands. Not tied down with fancy things, riding high on dreams and strings. Circus of bites under the stars, living large in my private bars. On the edge of two worlds I stand tall, digital cowboy answering my own call. Cold to shelter, I find my way. Freedom in the night and a bright new day. Not tied down with fancy things, riding high on dreams and strings. Circus of bites under the stars, living large in my private bars. On the edge of two worlds I stand tall, digital cowboy answering my own call. Go to shelter, I find my way. Freedom in the night and a bright new day. Bright new day and a bright new day. That was my private bars. In the crumbled walls, ancient stone, where whispers talk, I'm all alone. With my trusty scope, I bide my time. Every step they take, a silent crime. Among the fallen leaves and steel, I sit and wait, concealed, unreal. No one sees me, here I hide, in the shadows where my comrades died. Silent shadows waiting still on the battlefield. I feel the thrill. In the dark, the game is played, while the world around me starts to fade. Every breath, a measured draw. Every sigh, a silent law. With patience, I'll read the field. For in this war, I never yield. Silent shadows waiting still on the battlefield. I feel the thrill. broken heart.
Can y'all hear me? Good. Uh-oh. Stream is not achieving. Got a couple drop frames. I wonder what's going on with the internet. Ever since I started streaming at this new location, stream's generally been pretty good. Okay, it's back up now. Right on. Thanks for showing up, Rectum. Or were you talking about my stream, rather? Either way. We have a limited amount of time to get stuff done. What are we getting done? I did start writing unit test files. And as I mentioned earlier, we have to build up infrastructure to actually allow us to serialize some of these objects. Oh, hello. What's that? I'm gonna have to eat some real food here pretty soon myself. Not been doing a great job of ingesting calories every day. Need to work on that. So the tile structure has something like 19 properties that we're gonna have to serialize. So like each individual fucking tile is gonna have a lot of data to it. We have tile type, visible, explored, an array of entities as well as the count and the max. Has pressure plate up texture key, down texture key, pressure plate event, has wall switch on, wall switch up, TX key. See, I feel like the way I'm doing this could be improved as well. Like, I kind of hacked these in there just to get them working, but like my intuition is that this should actually work differently. Like technically, tiles should have like no information about like their texture. We should just have like a maybe a different like type that we actually switch to. But I think the reason I did it this way was that, well, I'm not sure why I did it this way now I think about it, but so effectively serializing this structure is going to mean having to translate each one of these into like a string or like translate the whole thing into not necessarily a string, but a series of bytes that we can like write out somewhere. And then ideally, when we like read this structure in from disk, Nano, he's eating a Q-tip. Where do you keep getting these? You don't necessarily have to write it out to disk using the serialization method. That could be something that sits above. But what we can do is do an experiment with the LLM. We're going to use Aider to extend Dungeon Tile to have a serialization and a deserialization function. And then we're going to add unit tests to make sure that they work properly. No, this is not local offline. This is actually plugged into DeepSeek via OpenRouter. OpenRouter is a fantastic API. It allows you to buy credits that can be used for any of the major LLM providers, such as OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, XAI, DeepSeek, and they even have like hosted models for like Quinn and stuff like that. I think they even have access to like Facebook Llama. But I use DeepSeek because I'm cheap and it works really well for how cheap it is. You could literally code all day using DeepSeek and probably spend less than $1. Oh shit. Um, okay, so it built. However, no, a dungeon tile broke. Um, oh, there we go. Now we got to fail. All right, so we got it to write unit test. The unit test built and failed. It's correcting the unit test, or rather, it's correcting the serialization function it wrote. All right, so it failed again. Yeah, I've played around with my own LLM stuff. I have a few models downloaded, and I've got a llama.cpp set up that I can use with it. I haven't tried using Aider with local model yet, but you supposedly have the ability to do so. Well, so far it's not going all that great. I don't think this is right down here. It's an off by 8 error. Need to smoke here in a minute and some more coffee. I might end up throwing a fucking plot at this bitch. Only off by 8. Wait a second. What are we initializing entity max to? 32. We'll reduce that to 8. And it's still off by 8. it claims to have fixed it, but I don't know that I like how it thinks it fixed it. It says the main issue was with tile serialized size, which wasn't correctly accounting for all of the fields being serialized. Here's the problem. Tile serialized size was returning a value greater than what was being written out. So this explanation actually doesn't make sense. So what it's saying it did is it instead altered how serialized size works in order to, sounds like, reduce the calculation or attempt to do it in the same way that the actual serialized does. But let's run the test and see what happens. Oh yeah, big failure. Um, but also it didn't build. Okay, that built and successfully that did it. It sounds like it's also correctly deserializing. That's kind of big. Okay, it did not build. So I guess we're serializing tiles now. So next we would need to serialize a whole dungeon floor. And then we'll need to serialize a dungeon. Once all three of those are serialized, here's the big daddy, Gamestate.
need my motherfucking coffee. Ain't not a person in the world who can stop me. The corporate world is the devil, I am godly. When I got my coffee, I'm the motherfucking top beat. Motherfucking coffee. Ain't not a person in the world who can stop me. The corporate world is the devil, I am godly. As long as I got my coffee, I am the motherfucking top beat. I need my motherfucking coffee. Ain't not a person in the world who can stop me. The corporate world is the devil, I am godly. As long as I got my coffee, I am the motherfucking top beat. I need my motherfucking coffee. Ain't not a person in the world who can stop me. The corporate world is the devil, I am godly. As long as I got my coffee, I am the motherfucking top beat. I need my motherfucking coffee. Ain't not a person in the world who can stop me. The corporate world is the devil, I am godly. As long as I got my coffee, I am the motherfucking top beat. I need my motherfucking coffee. Ain't not a person in the world who can stop me. The corporate world is the devil, I am godly. As long as I got my coffee, I am the motherfucking top beat. I need my motherfucking top beat. I need my motherfucking coffee. 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 Ain't not a person in the world who can stop me. The corporate world is the devil, I am godly. As long as I got my coffee, I'm the motherfucking top beat. If you didn't know about my code, I'm afraid you are too damn slow. Even though I move on the tiptoe, sloth mode, smoke a bowl, sit down, time to roll. You know we on that sick mode. Every day with the sick flow. Cause I am a motherfucking sicko. Dark medieval dojo. Good cause we keep our shit evil. Code so awful it might as well be lethal. You know I've got a programming disease. Hack the planet, bitch, I do as I please. You know we on that sick mode. Every day with the sick flow. Cause I am a motherfucking sicko. Dark medieval dojo. You know we on that sick mode. Every day with the sick flow. Cause I am a motherfucking sicko. Dark medieval dojo.
All right. Let's see here. Why the fuck? Wait, what? Oh, failed still. we not test deserializing? No, we do. Book hard as fuck. Oh shit. The output's kind of flying so fast. I didn't even get a chance to see how much we spent on that whole transaction already. There it is, 78 cents total. We're up to 99 cents now. Good thing I checked out a new repository for this one. This is probably the most I've spent in a single session. While Claude is supposed to be better than all of the other models, it's also the most expensive. While you may not, you know, harp about nickels and dimes like I do. All right, here we go. Oh, fuck. It passed. But we don't want to print all that out. Curious. It's a big number. Oh, no, it's not that bad. That's only 256 kilobytes. Well, no, it's 256,000 tiles, each one having you know what I want? I want functions to tell me like the size in memory that each object is taking, right? It did memory size for the dungeon floor as well. I was going to ask it to do that next, but this is one of the reasons I don't like Claude is that it makes too many assumptions and does not stick to just what you tell it. See, look at that. It fucking broke. Oh, but sweet, it actually printed out the sizes. It threw an error, but it still worked. Okay, so each dungeon floor is using the same amount of memory, and that's okay. That's kind of on purpose. I made the dungeon floor a static grid of 512 by 512 because I thought that was one, a large enough size that we could create like really big spaces. Of course, like if I were to cut the width and the height of the dungeon floor in half, all of the code should still work, and we would end up using slightly less memory as a result. To test this theory out, that cut it down significantly. Going down to five, or from 512 by 512 to 256 by 256, reduce the size of the dungeon floor from like 22 megabytes to about 6.8. So a pretty good reduction there. And of course, everything still works. Let's keep it from flooding with all of that print information. Hey there. What's up, girl? What's up? You want to go step out, do some business?
You are now listening to Evil Dojo Dark Mage in the house with the sick flow. You are now listening to Evil Dojo Dark Mage in the house with the sick flow. You are now listening to Evil Dojo Dark Mage in the house with the sick flow.
Okay, I'm back. Where did we leave off, Grace? All right. We appear to have just gotten Dungeon 4 serialization and deserialization working. I was trying to reduce how much stuff was getting printed out during the test. There we go. 6.8 megabytes per floor. We don't put a cap on like the width and the height of each floor in a dungeon, or like the width and the height of all possible floors in a dungeon. It can get out of control real fast. But by having a reasonable hard limit, and honestly, 20, even 22, like, is not that bad, right? But it adds up. Um, I have 22 megabytes per floor. If we start at 6.8, so like if a floor is 6.8 megabytes and we have a 20 floor dungeon, that dungeon's going to take 136 megabytes, like, to store the whole thing in memory, which is really not bad. But then when you go up to 22, now it takes 440 megabytes. But even that's not bad. Like, at the end of the day, we're going to be able to create a pretty big world within what is ultimately a small space. And that's like one of the major goals for the design of this project, is that I want to be able to craft worlds that are highly detailed and big. So you'll be able to zoom in and out on levels of detail and approach the game from either a micro or a macro perspective. Bless you. Now, this becomes a thing, like, why would we need to hold the whole dungeon in memory, right? Well, it's because if we're gonna be like one of the other goals is that, like, when you move between floors, entities on one floor are still able to move around. And I want to introduce the ability for entities like other NPCs to follow you between floors, which will be terrifying the first time that anyone encounters this. Because in a game like NetHack, you don't really encounter that until like the end of the game. When you get to the bottom of the dungeon, you get the book or the amulet or whatever. I think it's the amulet of Gondor. Once you get that amulet, the wizard shows up, and he's able to follow you between floors. I never got that far. NetHack is a very hard game. So if we are, in fact, correctly serializing and deserializing both tiles as well as dungeon floors now, then the next logical step will be to do the same thing for a whole dungeon. Because while like developing this, I'm working from the perspective of there only being one dungeon. It won't be long approaching it this way until we'll be able to have multiple dungeons. Because that's definitely a big goal. It would be very much like Sheeran in this way. Sheeran's a big inspiration for what I'm doing here. What a fucking phenomenal game. I might play some Sheeran tonight, in fact. It's a really low key game in comparison to a lot of what like people like to watch people play or whatever. But I have a lot to say about Sheeran, especially 5 and 6, because those are the two that I've really spent the most time with. But when I realized what Sheeran was doing and how it was doing it, it was a really big lights on moment for me. One of my big problems with NetHack is the control schema sucks. Oh god, does it suck. I want to like NetHack more, but it's such a barrier. You can kind of get around it by playing with numpad, but not every place, like the place that I like to play it, which is the alt.org like public NetHack server, doesn't have this feature enabled. So you have to play with default controls, and it fucking sucks. If NetHack was a bit more configurable in this way, and you could like reasonably make a good keyboard schema, yeah, isn't that right? Really? One of the key differences between Sheeran and what I'm doing is the potential size of a given dungeon floor in Sheeran is not nearly as big as mine. The system is like, in a lot of ways, kind of also inspired by like Dwarf Fortress. And in some ways, those games are very different, but in other ways, they're also very much the same. Two ends of the same coin. I like them both. I love them both. The first Dwarf Fortress was so hard to approach. Getting down with the keyboard, and even then, like a lot of those controls, they actually did implement in the Steam release. So you end up having to learn them anyway in order to like do anything faster. But after a while, there's certain keystroke combinations or like patterns that you pick up over time, and these kind of become your like default navigating interface for playing the game, right? Anyone watching right now? Let me check the chat. I'll look at the chat in a while. It's probably time for us to get back to code. Thank you. You haven't heard? Are you talking about Sheeran also? Um, so there's a Sheeran and the Tower of Fortune, which is Sheeran 5. You might have been talking about NetHack. Uh, so Sheeran 5 is it was originally a PSP game. Oh, okay, okay. Dwarf Fortress. It's great. Um, it's super low tech. It's not graphically impressive, but it doesn't need to be. That's kind of the point. But you can also like extrapolate forward in time, right? Like, given what two people have been able to do with that game over time, I don't know how many people are actually working on it actively, but the code base must be insane. The code base for Dwarf Fortress must be absolutely bananas. So what Sheeran does is Sheeran's kind of like a stripped down version of NetHack. It has a lot of the same features and a lot of the same, even the map interface is almost the same. But and they even have like shops within the dungeon, just like in NetHack. Um, and they have some like real interesting and fun mechanics if like you attempt to steal from the shopkeeper. Which, if you ever tried to do this in the original NetHack, um, it's hard to get away with because every shopkeeper is also like an overpowered NPC. And if you attempt to steal from them or if you attack them while you're in their store, they will fuck you up. Like, and I really enjoy that NetHack allowed you to do this because that represents a level of freedom that doesn't exist in a lot of games, right? Like, within the confines of the game universe, you should have the freedom to interact with virtually everything in the game, right? That's kind of like a really important design philosophy for me. Like, you know how like in Japanese RPGs, like the original Final Fantasies and Secret of Mana and stuff, whenever you go into a store, there's like a barrier between you and the shopkeeper, and you can never cross that barrier except in rare instances or in some games where they allow you to like go behind the counter or something to open like a secret chest or whatever. But they make an effort to like separate the player from that space so that you can only interact with the merchant on one side of the counter in order to like limit how much you're able to do there, because they just straight up said, well, we don't want that kind of mechanic, so we're going to omit that as a possibility. But the shopkeeper should be treated just like any other entity, right? It should be a thing that could be interacted with by talking with it or attacking it or casting a spell on it or whatever, right? And then you get to see like the consequences of those choices play out, and that's a lot of fun. Like one strategy for stealing from the shopkeeper is when you're playing NetHack, if you roll a samurai or a wizard, sometimes you'll get a familiar or a dog companion, and you can use this companion. Like every so often, the dog will just pick up random items and then place them in random other places. So if you stand in the doorway of the shop for long enough, you can just let your dog like pilfer stuff like by placing it outside of the store. And that technically doesn't count as stealing in that space. But I have distinct memories of fucking up stealing attempts. And the shopkeeper in NetHack often has like quick actions, so they can take multiple actions in a single turn. And more often than not, they've got like a wand that they zap you with, and it turns you into like a frog, or so like if it's the wand of polymorph, then you get transformed into like a random other like race or creature. And then you get hit with some other spell immediately after that without a chance to react, because yeah, it's just like blow after blow after blow, and you get fucking killed like real fast. Merchants don't tolerate that shit. So in Sheeran, the merchant's kind of like this really funny looking dude who kind of reminds me of Mr. Popo from Dragon Ball Z. And where is I going with that? It's similar to NetHack in that if you attempt to try to steal, um, there's a punishing like response. But the way they do it in Sheeran is they sound an alarm, and all throughout the dungeon, all of the regular monsters are replaced with super powered instances of the merchant. So now you're flooded with merchants in the dungeon who are out to kill you, and they will fuck you up. You have no chance to fight them. The only thing that you can do is utilize spells in order to get to the next floor as quickly as possible. So they take a different approach, but it's still like the same point, right? Like they don't want you to steal, but they let you do it. So if you happen, because in the Sheeran games, they actually keep track of how many times you successfully steal, and I think that's fucking awesome. Like what a cool like in-game mechanic. So like to steal, like what you end up doing is the way they implement shops is they have items on the ground. You pick up an item and then you talk to the shopkeeper. Shopkeeper tells you how much it costs. You pay them. The item is now marked owned in your inventory. Until you do that, you pick up that item, it's marked as belonging to the shop still. And if you attempt to walk out of the store with it, shopkeeper flies in front of you and he tells you how much it costs. And in Sheeran, they won't even let you leave the store. So you might be asking, well, how do you steal? Well, one of the ways that you can do it is by using a wand, or rather a staff of boring, which what that does is when you cast it, it drills a hole in the wall like 8 tiles deep. And you can carve out paths like exits the from the fucking storeroom, right? And you can connect them up with other rooms. So normally, like there might be like a couple different entrances into a merchant store, and if you attempt to leave through these pathways, the merchant will come fly at you and yell at you, prevent you from leaving if you have unpaid for merchandise. But if you drill a hole into another room, and I like to plan it so that it's a fail-safe maneuver here, right? Like in order to pull this off, you have to have several conditions. So you have to be able to drill the hole into another room. So you have to have the staff of boring or a pickaxe, and you have to like do this ahead of time. So once you get this hole into the other room, in the best case scenario, it's a room adjacent to the merchant's room, as in like immediately next to. And in that room is the exit to the dungeon floor. And the exit has to be like in the path of the hole that you drilled, or the tunnel that you bored, right? So next you have to use a staff of mounding in order to place a brick next to the stairs. And then once you go back in to the shop and you take all the merchandise that you want, you have to have a staff of pinning, which when cast will essentially like magnetically move you from your current position to the position that the bullet hit, which could be very far away. So you take all the items in the shop, you cast the bullet, and you fly to the wall that you placed just next to the stairs. So now you're on the stairs. The merchant yells that we have a thief. Oh my God. The dungeon floods with merchants, but because you're already on the stairs, you can just go to the next floor in a single turn, and you've successfully stolen a fuck ton of items potentially. And actually pulling this off can get you very far ahead and secure you in like your navigation through the dungeon like in a big way. Because items in the harder dungeons are hard to come by. But as I explained, there's a lot of setup in order to pull that off properly. It's not nearly as difficult to steal in NetHack. I haven't tried this technique, but another option might be you can pick up an item and then throw it outside the door. And I don't know if they would even care or try to block it or whatever. All right. So now that we've got this setup working for Dungeon Floors, actually, I wanted to do another test real quick. What if we cut it in half yet again? Now each floor only takes. Now this doesn't count the fact that we have a variable number of potential entities on a given tile, but by default they max out at 8, so we're encoding 8 at the moment. Even though they're like it's an empty dungeon, we still encode the space for 8. So one 1.7, it's not bad. That's really not bad. Because then what if we had like 10 dungeons? 3.4 gigabytes of memory for dungeons. That's kind of excessive, right? Like 340, like holding 340 megabytes in RAM for 10 dungeons is really not bad. And only a gigabyte for 30 at that size. What's the upper cap here? Like if we had 512, that's too big. But we only realistically have to have one dungeon in memory at any given time. Because the idea is that you're going to end up going between dungeons. Like first we'll have like some really small dungeons. They don't all necessarily have to conform to the same size. We could make them dynamic. Like we default them here. But realistically, the code handles for any width and height that we pass in. But one of the design ideas that I'm working with here is that every floor should realistically have the same width and height in terms of they should be squares and they should be reasonably big, like bigger than the rooms that you place in them. Because like I try to like afford padding so that we can just kind of treat the space like a canvas that we can just draw on top of. And so effectively the process of creating a dungeon then becomes a matter of like procedural drawing, right? Like there's a lot in Dungeon 4 that we're not testing really, that we do need to test eventually. Okay, we already have a test dungeon, so we started this process. anticipate that we'll run into serialization problems once I start testing adding more entities to a tile than 8. That's default right now. The code is set up so that if we add more than 8, it doubles its capacity. So it'll become 16, and then it'll keep doing this up to like 256, which I think would be like far too many. So we'll probably cap it even smaller than that. But if the serialization deserialization code doesn't take that size into account when it goes to allocate or read the space from the entities list, then we're going to run into issues. God damn, we've almost spent $2. This is by far the most expensive LLM session I've ever had. Big baller over here spending the big dollars. All right, so it's doing the same pattern that it did previously for serializing the dungeon floor as well as the tiles. First, it attempts to compute a size, and then it also does the serialization by writing it to a string, as well as reading it from a string. Claude knocked the first two out of the park. DeepSeek was choking on it bad. Let's run that test. And it passed. Oh shit. Fucking amazing. Look at that. There's our serialization. Look at all the code that Claude shat out for us. That was deserialized. Uh-oh. That didn't build. That couldn't have built. Or maybe it did. Oh, wait. There we go. Okay. But it's weird that it yelled at me in the editor. Huh. Great. Right. Look at that. key to navigate between floors, but it also needs to, just like the other keys, be used for cycling messages because frequently you'll want to double tap whatever key it was because it might have caused an event that creates a message window. And if so, then I want flexibility to be able to cycle messages using virtually any key. So it feels much better already. Also, one thing I want to work on is the responsiveness. There's like a lag at the end of your turn before, like, because it is still processing like the NPC's turn. I originally made it so that like it's very lockstep, so you won't be able to input anything until all of the other NPCs have not only completed their turn, but their animations have also completed. If you're the only entity in the dungeon, then the way it's set up is it won't like process your next turn until your animation for your turn is completed. It sounds not bad. I was just too far away for you. Shout outs to Rectum of Justice on Twitch for the follow. Appreciate that, buddy. Yeah, it is a naked. He is naked. What did I just say I wanted to do? Oh yeah. Well, I didn't say what I wanted to do, but I was just like thinking out loud. I wish the game were more responsive. I designed it this way, but it ended up being a trade-off, right? Previously, the whole reason that I do it this way is that before I implemented the lockstep, the entity states were overlapping. So like whatever your final state would be is like what gets animated. So if the player attacks an enemy and it hits the enemy, and the enemy attacks the player and it hits the player, then in the previous system, I was experiencing a bug where the final state of those two entities would be damaged. And so you would never actually see their attacks animate. And it just created for a kind of weird experience, even though when entities were just moving, like everyone moved at the same time. I don't know how easy it would be for me to like temporarily disable that system. I got fucking instant killed. Uh, that's fucking awesome. Oh, it's never given me a chance to do anything. I can't cycle messages. I can't do shit. I can't even close the game. And they're just attacking my dead corpse now. That's nuts. I better find a way to close this quick. It may not be so easy to undo that. Which is probably fine for now, but I would like to find a way to switch between those two operating modes. in a relatively easy fashion. It would be really useful but this is probably enough for today. Don't want to burn myself out. Well, thank everyone for joining. Thank you, Christian. I appreciate that. Please give me a follow on YouTube and Twitch, and stay posted because I stream pretty regularly. This game has come a long way, and it's still got a long way to go. But I hope to get a demo out to people real soon. And I'm really like, once I figure this little thing out, I'm gonna probably spend some time and do that because once we can save game and we can do so in the browser, I think people feel incentivized to want to come back to it, knowing that they haven't like lost their game or anything. All right, guys. Thanks for joining. I gotta piss. Until next time.